The coronavirus pandemic has resulted in the largest increase in unemployment the US has ever seen.
Officially got laid off from my job due to the coronavirus.
We are at risk of losing our houses, cars, basic necessities.
These are just a few of the 17 million Americans who lost their jobs over the span of only 3 weeks. Most of the people getting laid off are low-income workers in the service industry, like your restaurant servers and bus drivers. Not to mention that these layoffs are disproportionately affecting African Americans and Latinos. So why are the most vulnerable Americans paying the heaviest price for the COVID-19 pandemic? Hey guys, it's Dina, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home where I'm currently sheltering. And today I'm going to break down how the US is failing to protect its workers during this pandemic and how that's not only hurting our economy, it's also contributing to a wider spread of the coronavirus.
Do you want somebody who's coughing or sneezing or, sick in some way making your hamburger?
So much of this crisis comes down to the US having an overall weak social safety net. A social safety net is a system that most industrialized countries have to ensure that if you lose your job, you're not immediately drowning in poverty. It's a support system that fills in lost income while you search for your next job and sets you up for retirement. America's social safety net often encompasses measures you may have been hearing a lot recently.
Paid sick days.
But decades of policies in the US have weakened the social safety net by restricting government spending to help those in need. Which is why even before COVID-19 hit the US, unions and some politicians had been demanding better working protections. A major demand has been paid sick days for all workers.
Every worker in America should be guaranteed at least 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave.
Paid sick days exist to ensure a basic security to workers that it's okay to stay home and recover. That also helps contain any sort of disease. But the US has no federal legal requirements for paid sick leave. In fact, only 12 states and the District of Columbia guarantee it. And the rest of the states leave it up to the companies to make the rules.
Ones that are in those same professions like leisure and hospitality, retail, trade, they're less likely to have paid sick days. Lower paid workers, less likely to have sick days before the pandemic hit the United States.
The inequality is stark. While 93% of America's high-wage workers can enjoy paid sick days, only 30% of the lowest-wage workers do. That's why 33 million Americans who don't have paid sick leave are confused when the CDC recommends they stay home and the government is saying this.
If you're sick, stay home. You're not going to miss a paycheck because of this legislation that's moving through the Congress.
That legislation he's talking about is the coronavirus emergency bill that President Trump signed on March 18th. But contrary to what Pence had promised, not everyone got paid sick days. The bill reads that only companies with fewer than 500 employees will be guaranteed them.
There's really no economic reason to be carving out these large employers. That's completely a political decision, not an economic decision.
The bill left out large corporations like McDonald's, Walmart, and Burger King that have no obligation to give out paid sick days to thousands of their workers. We spoke to Mindy, who's been working for McDonald's in Maine for 17 years.
To me, it's really pretty basic. Do you want somebody who's coughing or sneezing or, sick in some way making your hamburger?
Mindy said she's never had a sick day, and because of that, she's too often had to go to work despite feeling ill.
Without paid sick leave, don't feel like I have much of a choice. That's $70 or $80. That's your phone bill. That's your light bill.
Too many Americans are forced to make that same choice, if you could even call it one, between protecting their health and protecting their livelihoods. And when vulnerable workers like Mindy interact with hundreds of customers every day, the US risks an even wider spread of the coronavirus. The failure to provide benefits to all workers doesn't just expose the US to the spread of COVID-19, it also threatens deep damage to the US economy that might outlast this pandemic. Since COVID-19, no other country has experienced the scale of unemployment that America is facing. And that's not a coincidence. In the US, folks who've been laid off have to fill out paperwork to claim unemployment insurance. It's a pretty burdensome and tedious process, especially now as government offices are closed and websites keep crashing. And then they wait weeks to receive what's usually around $385 a week. That's less than half the average weekly paycheck in the US. The coronavirus bill has increased that amount to an additional $600 a week, but that only lasts until July 31st. And keep in mind, not all workers can even get these benefits. In most states, freelancers, undocumented workers, and students aren't eligible to receive unemployment insurance.
If we had a better unemployment insurance that caught all workers, regardless of their work hours or work histories, then we would be in a much better place when the pandemic hit.
On top of that, the US is the only wealthy economy that has a healthcare system linked to employment. That means when people lose their jobs, they're also losing their coverage for treatment at the worst possible time. So how are other parts of the world responding to this crisis, you might wonder?
Other wealthy countries, including those in Northern Europe, consistently have more robust social protection systems. They have programs with the architecture and infrastructure in place to avoid mass layoffs.
In Britain, for example, the government is directly paying 80% of salaries to those unable to work during the pandemic so that people can keep their jobs during the crisis. Then, once the pandemic is over, they can immediately resume their jobs. Here in the US, people will have to spend time applying for brand new jobs, but there's no guarantee which jobs will even exist when the pandemic ends. Not only does this compound the anxiety of being unemployed, it also slows down the bounce back to normal economic activity. In other European countries, governments are using their labor protection laws to help prevent a recession. For example, Italy was able to order its residents to stay home amid the crisis because the country guarantees paid sick leave for all workers. The same goes for Denmark, Germany, Spain, Ireland, Austria, and Norway. Basically, a lot of wealthy countries except for the United States. Economists say these measures instill confidence in people to spend money and keep the economy afloat. To make up for America's weak social safety net, a string of emergency bills have been passed in Congress, including a $2 trillion budget to provide speedy economic relief to Americans. But economists say these measures are merely band-aids on a deep wound.
Why in the world are we essentially building the fire department in fire truck in the middle of a fire? What's clear now is we need a substantial, sustained, and structural response.
Look, this probably won't be the last time the US will have to overcome an outbreak or recession or natural disaster. So this coronavirus pandemic begs the question, will the US take this as a lesson to make much needed systemic changes and protect all of its workers before the next crisis hits?
It's a little hard to imagine, but can you imagine this pandemic happening in a world where we all did get universal health care, and we all did get a living wage, and we all did get paid sick time? If all of those things were reality right now, we would be in such, an astronomically better place in this moment in time.